Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio. I am your host, Bernard Alvarez, and we got a fantastic show for you today. As usual, we've got a fantastic guest. Aingeal Rose O'Grady will be joining us in just a few moments to be discussing the Akashic Records, and hopefully we'll be able to talk a little bit about some of the topics in her wonderful new book. I don't know if it's new actually anymore, A Time of Change. One of my favorite books I've been reading this year, and just open up every other day and just read a passage. It's great stuff. But without further ado, let me, of course, welcome our assistant director and producer, Trevor Knott, joining us live from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Hello, Trevor. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
And you were just posting on the Skype. You know, we do the show on Skype, and you just posted in the IM. It's 100 Fahrenheit in Winnipeg, Manitoba?
Yep.
Oh,
yep, that's with the humid X factor and everything. It's crazy.
Oh, my gosh. Wow, Canada's 100 degrees. That's crazy. Oh, there's no climate change. No. But
come down and join me.
Yeah, come down. Unbelievable. It's actually, I got to tell you, we've had some really beautiful weather here the last few days. It is in the 80s, but, you know, that's expected here in August. I will say we were down in the 50s and 60s. A couple of weeks ago here in Roanoke, Virginia, which is kind of strange. It was a nice appetizer for fall, and I can't wait for fall. Fall and spring are definitely my favorite seasons, especially here in the Appalachian Mountains. But with that being said, I just want to share with everybody what a great day I had yesterday. I was working, besides GIC, besides Revolution Radio, besides everything else that I do, for consciousness and our movement, I'm also on the board of directors for the Roanoke Diversity Center, and I produced, wrote, and whatnot, filmed a wonderful video with two young gay men in Appalachia and what's it like growing up gay in Appalachia. And I've got to tell you, growing up in South Florida is a huge difference. I grew up on South Beach and Fort Lauderdale and all that, so I can't imagine what it was like growing up in the Appalachian area here. But the video was great, and the reason why I bring it up is because it was so beautiful outside. You can see it in the video. I mean, we could see the horizon. You can see the Blue Ridge Mountains behind them, and it just looks absolutely fantastic. And I'm just so grateful to be living in such a beautiful community and a part of the world and being close to Earth, which is another thing I've got to share with everybody. And maybe Aingeal can chime in on this when we bring her on the show. I don't know how many of you have, I call them dream time classes or lessons or guidance, spiritual guidance in our dream time. And I've got to say that most of my dream time spiritual guidance in the past has always been very, well, for lack of a better term, the teachers were always like Buddhist monk type figures anyway. And there was always a lot of people involved and whatnot. And not to mention the fact also that, there are times where I've just had one-on-one spiritual entities speak to me in my dreams. However, last night I had a first time ever. I have never seen this. And I'm wondering if it was because I was up on the mountains yesterday filming this video. But I remember this, and of course I have my REM deep sleep in the morning, probably like most people, like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. I don't wake up till about 8 o'clock. But in the dream, I just saw this woman. It was a female figure, let's say, and she was wearing these red-colored robes, and I'll say they're the same burgundy-colored robes that my quote-unquote Buddhist-style etheric guides come to me in. But she was wearing this like gray mask. It was very no color, no detail, just almost. I don't want to say maybe like pre-Columbian style mask, something like that. And the words that she said to me have stuck with me all day long, and it's just been giving me so much peace and so much. I just love this feeling I'm getting from the words that she said. And she said to me, "These forests are hold, or these are." I forgot what it was. I forgot. Sorry, guys. She said basically that these woods are ancient and hold a lot of ancient history and knowledge, and that the history is in the hair that grows out of our body and the blood that courses through our veins. I'm paraphrasing here. But I was just so overwhelmed with that, and this figure was standing at the base of a tree. There were probably 3 or 4 other people there, 4 other beings, images of humans, perhaps students or whatnot. And it was funny because somebody had wrote on our Facebook page today, they're like, "Oh, that is the Lady of the Lake." I'm like, I thought, isn't the Lady of the Lake Queen Mab or so? I don't know. But I just finished watching the Merlin series, so I'm all screwed up with my my Arthurian legends. But I just got to say, what a fantastic experience, and what a great way to wake up. And I can't help but wonder if this was a precursor of our talk today with Aingeal on the Akashic Records. Before we get started with Aingeal, I just wanted to send out an acknowledgement and a prayer to the people of Syria. I'm very concerned that we are going into another front in this global American empirical war for resources and control of military bases and strategic places around the planet for the cabal, for lack of a better term. And I feel so horrible for these people that have been affected, have been murdered, have been killed for no reason. And we're not even sure if it was... We just posted a report today that there's been leaked documents that say that these rebels are the ones that did the chemical killings and not the government, and that the rebels are being backed by the United Nations and the American military. So, is it another false flag? I'm not sure, but the reality of it is that people are getting hurt, people's lives are being destroyed, all in the name of empire. And it's very disheartening, so I just want to send a prayer and my thoughts out to everyone in Syria, and just hope that we come to a very swift and clear path to peace, again, very, very quickly. And so, without further ado, let me tell you a little bit about our guest today, Aingeal Rose. We've had Aingeal Rose on our live stream show in the past. I believe it was back in January, and I just adored the conversation so much. Again, as I said earlier, I love her book, A Time of Change, Akashic Guidance for Spiritual Transformation. During the past 40 years, Aingeal Rose O'Grady has acquired certifications in numerous healing modalities, including Reiki, all levels to Master Teacher, psychic laser therapy, hypnotherapy, including past life regression, Cathara healing, and more. She was a tarot reader and teacher for 35 years and teaches transformational writing. She has been doing private Akashic readings for clients worldwide over the past 15 years and began group Akashic sessions in 2010 in Ireland and the United States. Again, I'm so looking forward to this conversation. So without further ado, let me welcome Aingeal Rose to the show. How are you, Aingeal? Welcome.
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on again. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
It's a pleasure to talk to you as well, Aingeal. Well, first of all, let's banter for a moment. How have you been? How is work? How is your career going? How's the book doing? Are there any new books coming up? What's been going on with you?
Okay. Well, we are very, very busy with the online Sunday group Akashic Record sessions. We started those, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago. And what they are is a forum, a free forum, actually, to allow people to call in on a Sunday morning and ask questions of Source. So it's basically a service that I'm providing because we had so many questions from people around the world, and a lot of them could not attend a physical group. So we decided just to make them free, and we put them online. So we're very busy because we take that information and we turn it into little ebooks and little CDs. And the information is building. I don't know how many we've done so far, but 60, my husband says. So they're just chock full of all sorts of awesome questions. And that takes a lot of time. And in between there, I have my private readings. And I'm also in process of writing the second book, which is coming out at the end of January 2014. And that will be called The Nature of Reality. It will be various questions people have asked of the records that deal with consciousness and time and reality and dreams and miracles and God and our multidimensional selves. So it'll be in the same type of question-answer format as the first book. Yeah. It's just going to cover different topics.
It sounds fantastic. I'm so excited. I can't wait. Aingeal, let me, for our listeners that haven't watched us together on the video that we put out a few months ago, could you share with everybody a little bit about what brought you onto the spiritual path? What really led you to do what you're doing right now?
Okay. Well, I was married when I was 18 years old from a guy in my senior year of high school, and he was murdered 3 months after we were married at his work. Someone came in to rob him, and they shot him.
Oh my!
So up until that point, I just wanted to be a mom and have children. And because there were a lot of unanswered questions around his death and what happened that evening, I went to my first psychic, and she became my first teacher. And that whole event actually catapulted me onto a spiritual path when I was 19 years old. So I got very interested in consciousness and especially the mind. And of course, back then I was learning about angels and life after death. And I just gravitated toward the tarot. I taught myself the tarot, learned Jungian tarot at some point, just because, if you get into the tarot, you keep going to deeper and deeper levels of the tarot. And then I got into rebirthing and physical immortality and how your thoughts create your reality. And it just catapulted me onto this huge path. So I also meditated every day, but my meditations were more like journeys. I was taken to different planes of existence by my guides and teachers, and I saw many, many other worlds. But I was also being taught what I call inner alchemy, which was really the purification of my thoughts and beliefs. So that took me, that actually kind of really enhanced my psychic ability, because the more I meditated and went on these journeys, the greater my telepathy got, my visual abilities. So I could see, hear colors, so it was, they were like, sometimes they were 2 and 3 hour journeys that I'd go on. So I spontaneously would find myself in my own Akashic records, but it was always for a specific purpose. Like, they would only show me a particular lifetime if there was something I still needed to resolve or forgive in it, or if there was something that would help me understand a current condition, or something that I needed to heal, or perhaps even gifts that I would have attained in a particular life. So they were deliberately chosen. And but after a while, I got a bit frustrated that I couldn't get in my own records. I didn't know how to get in there myself. So I took a course. There was actually a couple Jewish women in Chicago. I don't remember now if they were sisters. They could have been sisters, who were teaching this old Mayan prayer on how to access the Akashic records. So I took their course, and the information that came through for personal readings was so different than what I could access from reading the tarot that I switched over from reading tarot cards to reading Akashic Records.
Mm-hmm.
And the groups evolved out of the fact that people were asking a lot of bold questions. This was, 2010. So, of course, the economy had changed and suicides were happening all over the place in Ireland. And, of course, there was the 2012 thing people were heading toward. So we decided to create a group where people could just come and ask those types of questions. Not personal, just world or spiritual or healing or anything other, let's just say.
Mm-hmm.
And the information that started coming through there, I found that Source was speaking to us directly. And we learned so much. I mean, we got a nice big picture perspective when people would bring questions, and even today when they bring questions, because Source is answering, you get it from Source's perspective, which is much different than how we see things linearly. So those have been valuable. I think I personally have changed a lot by this process in the sense that I have more inner peace. I'm not so, I do get concerned about, the shift that we're in. I am concerned about the antics of the evil agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm very concerned.
Right.
But I also understand what's going on with it. And it doesn't take away the fact that we do have to go through it, it seems. Okay, until we shift a certain way in our minds. And that's a process, because we're really going from a consciousness of people that are used to buckling to authority and don't even understand their own authority. We have to transit out of all of that dogma and move to beings that are self-sustaining. And, unfortunately, the drama, heats up and then it calms down and then it heats up, as you know. And so that's what got me into it all. And I did do a lot of healing work in between there. I did a lot of psychic surgery. That's what the psychic laser therapy is that you read. It's a form of psychic surgery where you remove things out of people's fields. Okay, so there was times in there. I don't do so much energy work anymore, but I'm more focused on the records and bringing in whatever information I can.
Wow. Very good. I just want to mention, I remember my first experience with psychic surgery, and it was a gentleman who was, how shall I say, was a walk-in.
Okay.
A walk-in from the future had come into this person's physical body, and he created all these wonderful tools, and he was the first one to bring up the fact that, as many people know, and I'm very public about it, I just spoke about it last week, I was involved with some less than conscientious organizations in the past. I got involved, with gray magic and things like that. And this gentleman pointed out to me that I had a Klingon, and I was like, "What are you talking about? Like Star Trek?"
Yeah, right.
He's like, "No, an entity is stuck in your field." He goes, "And I can remove it for you." And I was like, "What?" And he pulled out this wonderful. It was a crystal, and I remember it was like wrapped with some copper wire and all these different things. And he kind of put me into a very, I guess, an alpha state or a theta state even. And just kind of like did some work on my etheric body, and my life's been different ever since. I will say, absolutely. It was about 4 years or 5. No, I take that back. It was about 6 years prior to starting the work that I'm doing now. But that was my first experience with psychic surgery. So I definitely know that it works.
I had it. I started it actually through a dream. Believe it or not, I had these two female beings come to me in a dream one night, and they had me drink this liquid, and next thing you know, I was traveling in these underground tunnels at hyperspeed all through the earth, and they would take these turns at right angles, and I ended up under the Great Pyramid, under the platform. And they told me to wait there. Next thing you know, I'm in a crystal city, and they tell me I'm going to be a healer. Because up until that point, I wasn't doing any healing work.
Mhm.
And the next day, a girlfriend of mine who was a Reiki master called me and told me that she was guided to attune me to all the levels of Reiki for free. So I did that, but I still never worked on anyone. We just kind of met as practitioners, and we gave Reiki to each other. And literally one night, I'm working on someone, and all of a sudden I see Native American clothing on her and a whole other past life scene. And Reiki wouldn't remove it all. And everybody that laid down after that, I saw all these imprints. And you are right, there's entities in there, there's implants in there, there's all sorts of things. And of course, the teacher appeared about 2 months ago. She came from Nevada, and she taught me how to remove all this stuff. And next thing you know, I had a business for 12 years nonstop of people calling me saying, I don't know what you do, but I need it. That's all I did for 12 years. It's psychic surgery.
Isn't that fantastic? You know, I've got to say that, you know, I myself am also a Reiki master and teacher, and I can't help but share with someone like yourself. It's a joy speaking to somebody like you, because I feel for me, I just found that, you know, Reiki was a stepping stone into creating almost an intuitive way of healing. And in that intuitive way of healing, it does include, whether it be psychic surgery, removing blockages in chi, and all these other things. And so I'm so grateful to have gone through the training, as you know, as yourself, with becoming a Reiki master and whatnot. But again, just acknowledging how it just evolves, and we eventually we take. I used to have a boss who used to say, "Take ownership of your work." You know, this was back when I was working in the fashion industry. Take ownership of your work. And I remember hearing those words when my hands or my mind would want to deviate from what I was trained to do. And it was like, just go with it. Go with your intuition.
Yes. And I know, and that, you know, you are right. Reiki evolved to the psychic surgery, and then I did a bit of Kasara healing, which worked on a completely different level, because the psychic surgery would work in the etheric layers, like you mentioned, around the body, and the Kathara worked on the inner core template. So it was very interesting, but I don't know, you know, I got to a point where all of a sudden I didn't want to do healing work anymore.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I'm about there myself.
Yeah, I do. I still do remote sessions if people want it, but it's rare. I really do. I enjoy the records. We also have a Saturday radio show. I enjoy getting knowledge and information out. That's really my passion, I guess.
Absolutely.
If I think about it, and I'm older now too, you know, Bernard.
Yeah. No, kneeling around a table or standing around a table for an hour doing a session is a little draining, for sure.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just did a session back. I think the last session I did was back in April or March or something. And I just remember just being so exhausted from the actual work. And I remember somebody said to me, oh, well, if you're tired after the session, then you're doing it wrong. And I'm like, but you know what? My knees are tired. My arms get tired. My feet get tired. It's not a matter of me feeling drained from the energy. It's just the physical aspect of it that gets it can be trying on us as we evolve past the age of 40.
I know. But plus, you know, when I started doing the psychic laser, the surgery, that energy was a whole different frequency than Reiki. It was hot. And it would come through me first, of course. And it took me even months to get used to the heat of that energy. And once I got used to it, I was fine. But in the beginning, I mean, sweat would pour off me. I would just be boiling. But it does tax your adrenals. You know, bringing through high energy like that can drain your adrenal glands, because it's kind of like when somebody gets struck by lightning. You know, there are some people who can integrate the experience, and other people who, like, here's Daniel Brinkley, whose physical body got damaged, but he woke up a different part of his brain. You know, frequencies are interesting because our body does have to adjust to them. and incorporate them. And if it's not ready, it's the same thing if people have a premature Kundalini awakening and they're not ready for it. I mean, you see people who become arthritic and disfigured and crazy. So I found with the psychic surgery energy, I did it for 12 years. And after that, I thought, I'm exhausted. And I am just now, under the care of a naturopath who's kind of helping me with, some of the glandulars in my brain that aren't functioning up to performance anymore. And I know a lot of that is because I'm using those faculties every day.
Yeah.
But you do have to nurse yourself on the other end,
Yes, absolutely. And it's so funny how I just want to. I'm bringing this up so our listeners could help them to understand that just because someone is a practicing healer or is working with energy, it's very easy for that energy to become, I don't want to say destructive, but to create certain imbalances in our physical bodies.
Yes,
and
that's
so
true.
Someone had said to me, I've had, this is very strange. I don't know why I'm bringing this up now, but it works out well with this talk, is I remember my whole life I've had problems with my teeth, with my gums. I've always had beautiful teeth. I never had problems with them being crooked or anything like that. But I've always had problems with my gums, getting abscesses and things like that, and paying thousands and thousands of dollars to have deep scaling and all that stuff, and crowns, and it goes on. It's nowhere near over. I have about another $30,000 worth of work that needs to be done. However, someone pointed out to me, they said it's very funny that the teacher of truth has problems with their mouth. And that really stuck with me. And I was like, could it be just the energy that is being moved through me that could be a reason for that happening and creating all these deteriorating circumstances? But again, just because you're a healer, you're not perfect is the point I'm trying to point out there.
Yeah. and you do bring up an interesting offshoot of that, Bernard, because even when you think of people who sing, for a lot of their lives, and then they end up with throat cancer at the end or some other weird thing that inhibits their ability. And I always wonder about that myself. It's a good question that I think I'm going to ask Sunday on the records. But let me just ask you, too, have you tried oil pulling on your mouth?
Actually, it's funny. Someone had brought that up about a year ago, and then I saw it again yesterday. Our good friends at Collective Evolution talk about it.
Yes.
And I was like, but 15 minutes? I don't think I have the patience to do that.
Actually, you don't really have to do it for 15. When I was first taught, somebody said just put some organic coconut oil in your mouth and swish it around for, 30, 40 seconds and spit it out. And even just doing it that long, You can feel it.
I guess we're coming up on break. It's sooner than I thought. We'll be right back, and we're going to talk about the Akashic Records.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio. We're having a fantastic discussion today with Aingeal Rose O'Grady, and we're just getting started. What can I say? We've had a great conversation on many topics in the first half hour. But let's go ahead and let's jump into the topic of today's show, the Akashic Records. Aingeal, can you define for those that may not completely understand, what are the Akashic Records?
All right. The Akashic Records are really the way the universe gets imprinted, if I can just say that. It is like a tape recorder of everything that happens in creation. And there are many people who think that it is only the recording of our soul journeys through time and space, but it really isn't. And there are people who believe the records are limited to the earth. I am not one of those. My experience is that they are the record of all creation that's ever happened ever. So to me, there's various frequencies of Akashic Records that people can access. And that really depends on, what you're trying to find out, and also the frequency of who's ever receiving the information. But really, on a personal note, it is the truth that the universe records all of your lifetimes, every minutest little detail, everything, even that we don't view every day, in our everyday lives. For example, you could be walking down the street someplace and birds could be flying over your head, or people in the house 2 doors down could be having a conversation that maybe you wouldn't notice. But, if when you pass over and you see your record unfold like a videotape, that's going to be in there. Those birds flying overhead, those people having a conversation, every little thought and feeling is recorded. And it's recorded because life is, we actually create life as we go. There is this stuff of life that allows things to be created, but our lives and our decisions and what we do contributes to the unfolding of more life. So we are actually creating all the time. And this gets imprinted into the universe as data, as history. So why I love the records is because many people believe that we come in here into Earth, we're born into Earth, and we're meant to forget. And I think that is a distortion, personally. I think we forget because we just don't come in with certain DNA strands activated. And certainly you're seeing these new children come in and theirs are activated. They do come in remembering other lives.
Yeah.
But it helps you understand when you can see your records and you can see what you've been doing in other lives and what your soul wants to do this life. It helps you so much make decisions. It doesn't take away the fact that you still have to make decisions. So you can have a whole soul plan set up, for example, and you go back and somebody reads your records and they say, oh, here's what your soul contract is. This is what you've been attempting to do this life. But you're still presented with the opportunities and the challenges and the choices. And there are people who do not fulfill soul contracts in their lifetime. So it's all a living record, though, of your progress, because ultimately what's really happening is we're all eventually going to evolve back to the masterful selves that we are. Really, we become love is really what happens in the end. Okay. So your decisions and your choices, they either propel you forward in that way or they digress you. And people certainly do digress in lives. So that's what the records are to me. I call it the all that is. It's the history of all that is.
Beautiful definition. And I actually agree with you very much in the sense that the reality of it is that it's not just life on Earth. Let's be realistic. We could have a life on another civilization on a planet a million light years away, if that's the case. But for those, again, to speak in layman's terms, is it fair to say that the Akashic records are karma, or how would you differentiate the two if that's the case?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not going to say they're karma because they are a record of everything. And you don't have karma with everything. Okay, karma, in my understanding, is really anything that you haven't resolved. Okay, and let me clarify that. And I learned this actually through doing the psychic surgery, because it was actually Jesus who came to me and told me that psychic surgery was the law of forgiveness and grace, in the sense that people hold their karma in their aura. In the etheric layers around their body is where you're holding the imprints, the unreconciled stuff. Everything is in there. And this is the reason also why people sometimes don't manifest what they want, because they're not vibrating at a frequency that'll attract it because they have all this other stuff in there. Okay. So karma could be any kind of an emotional charge that is not it's not reconciled, and that can be positive as well as negative. In other words, when I used to look into people's fields, you definitely see their past life history. You see trauma, you see torture, you see influence from dogma from other people would be sitting in their fields. So karma isn't necessarily bad stuff. It's anything that you still have an emotional charge around that hasn't been forgiven or neutralized. So let's say you got somebody coming to you who complains that they've never found the right partner, for example.
Mhm.
And they're starting to think, well, I must have really negative karma because every relationship I'm in doesn't work out. And yet you look in their time stream and you see that back in 1880, they were very much in love with this person. They had a strong soulmate and wonderful marriage. And what they're doing is that imprint is still stuck in their fields, and they're waiting for that person. That person may not even be here. They may not even have incarnated. But the fact that they have an imprint that reminds them of a particular love means it's really a karmic imprint that's not resolved because they want it again. They want that person again. Even though this lifetime they may not have set it up to ever meet that person. So, those things to me are, once you clear those away, even if it's positive, you clear that imprint out of their fields, it allows them to be in the present moment, to live more fully in the present. So karma is interesting because I'm not a believer that we have to re-experience things that we may have made bad choices in other lives that harm people, let's say. But I'm not a believer that you have to come back and experience that yourself. God sources taught me that forgiveness is higher. And forgiveness really means that you do come to a place where you really understand that the only thing that's going on at all times from God's source is that everybody gets another opportunity to make another choice, to learn about love. And that goes for the most evil person as well as the most lovely, wonderful person. It's the same. There's no favoritism from God. There's no judgment. Yeah.
Yeah, there is no such thing as an evil act or a good act. It's just an act. It is what it is, and it is the manifestation of an action. Period.
Right. Now, of course, like attracts like.
Yes, absolutely.
Like if you don't get to forgiveness, if you don't get forgiveness in the sense that it's really all about not wishing harm on anyone, if you don't get that, until you get that, you will be under the law of cause and effect.
Yeah.
Which means like attracts like.
And let's expand on that just a little bit. The reality of it is, for me as an individual on this path of growth, evolution, spiritual awakening, I have, in my early teens, you're carefree, you don't care, you say things, you do things that people, that can be very offensive and hurtful and hurt other people. Yeah. As we move into our 20s and our 30s, we start to get a grasp of who we are. And as we progress on this life's journey, and don't get me wrong, I know that there are, we have the indigos and the rainbows and the crystals that are aware of this already. But for those of us who may not have been aware of it until the 90s or whatever, like myself, there is the opportunity to move beyond it and to create new. And I think that's the hard part that people have, that we have the ability to create new positive karma. And so what can we say to people? Yeah. A great example is, we always hear about the cycle of abuse, quote unquote. Your grandfather abused your grandmother, so your father abused your mother, and now you're going to abuse your lover. So what can we say about the inevitability of, let's say, past actions, either through ourselves or through our family? Is there the ability to create new Akashic records and or karma or law of return and attraction?
Yes, absolutely. Every moment is new. The thing about genetics is, because in a way you're speaking about a genetic imprint that's being passed forward.
Yeah.
Okay. There is usually one or two people in a family that are kind of appointed, to clear the ancestry, clear the karmic ancestry. And that person will take on the brunt of a lot of the effects of negative ancestry. But they're usually chosen, or they decide to choose it because energetically they can handle it, or they have particular coding that can offset some of this. But, I'm not going to, let's just talk about on the regular level of the normal person. It still always comes down to, all right, you have the situation. What are you going to do with it? Okay. See, in my mind, spirituality isn't that you get to a place where you don't ever experience any challenge or hardship.
Yeah.
To me, spirituality is, well, how do you respond to what happens? Okay. And it's the difference in the response that really determines if somebody makes new genetic coding for the family. It still does have to come down to what a person chooses and what they're going to do with what they're given. So, yes, like will attract like and things will be handed down, but we are always given options in our lives. Everybody's given options. So just as there's people with addictions and people who do abuse, they do have the choice. I mean, you can have two people in the same family who experience an abusive parent, and one of them will go on to be an abuser and the other one will transform it. They'll go on to be a healer. Okay, so it still does come down to what do you do with what you're given. And those choices are the things that change everything. They change the whole pattern because, particles and waves and atoms, I mean, they all respond to whatever you tell them to do. So if you make a different choice and you're saying, we're not doing this anymore, we're now doing this, they go, oh, okay, and they start to adjust and make chemicals accordingly. But it's also the reason why we teach transformational writing, because something as simple as that, where you just get a notebook and you start asking yourself questions. Let's use since you're on the topic of abuse, we'll say, okay, I have been abused because I believe. And you just start to write down whatever comes to you. And then you take that and you inquire about that. Because if you come from the place where you say, well, it's all beliefs, it's all patterning, it's all coming from the imprint of my consciousness someplace. And that doesn't mean everything's your fault, but it does mean that if you're experiencing it, it's contained within you somewhere. All right. Well, you start inquiring as to, well, what does this mean to me? Because the subconscious makes associations with its experiences. You go through an experience, you come out of it with a conclusion, and that conclusion goes into your subconscious, and your subconscious says, right, this is the conclusion. This is what we're going to keep recreating all the time because that's the command. And until you look at that and you say, oh, I've got X associated with Z, I better change that around and make X associated with Y so that it serves me. Until you do that, you're really kind of in the effect of your subconscious. So I kind of went off on a tangent there, but
no, but it's very enlightening and very pertinent to what we're discussing here. And I just want to bring up. I'm looking at the chat room, and there's a discussion going on about good and evil.
Okay.
And this is a great topic. So thank you everybody who's typing away there. I just wanted to say that, or not to say, but maybe ask you, Aingeal.
Right.
We talked a little bit earlier about the fact that humanity is going through a process of, how shall we say, awakening to our love, awakening to a higher consciousness. We're seeing a lot of negative stuff in the news. We're seeing, the situation with Syria and whatnot. But even on the personal level, how would you explain, or how can you help us define what is good and evil, in the sense of, in my training and my magical training, I was trained to understand that there is no good and evil. There is only the outcome that presents itself in order to help evolve ourselves or our humanity. In other words, people look at, for example, a forest fire as something evil. But meanwhile, the forest fire destroys everything and allows the new seedlings to take root and to grow.
Right.
I know this is a very, very expansive topic,
It is.
What can you share with us in the sense of how can we better define good and evil within our lives?
Okay. Where do I begin?
I put you on the spot. I'm sorry, but it's a big topic, and I wanted to touch base on that.
Okay.
Let's see.
Well, I'm going to approach it first from Source's perspective. Okay? So, Source's perspective is not that everything is love. Okay? In other words, on the one hand, it'll say that what holds creation together is love. What allows things to even become materialized at all is love. And love really is a physics term in the way that I'm speaking. Okay? It is actually a foundational template or imprint that allows life to have intelligence, to know what it's doing. So at the highest level, that is really all that's happening at the highest level. And that can never be destroyed by anything. But when you come down the levels, and we are in a planet of duality thinking, and which means that we have this positive and negative thing going on inside of our own brain, actually. And we have two perceptions of ourselves as well. We have a perception of ourselves as we remember that we were spirit. And then we have another perception that says, oh no, we're in this body. We have this physical ego personality. And we are always in conflict between those two truths. And we don't always know which one is true. So whenever you have a duality planet, you're going to see opposites. That's just what happens. But you are right in the sense that, and maybe we could come down to perception about this,
Okay.
because how you look at an event that is going on determines how you understand it. So here we are hearing all this stuff in the news, and it's obvious that there's a battle going on between two forces that seem to be opposite. But out of anything can evolve good. And you make a great example with forest fires, or with any place that's been devastated, the rainforest, let's say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
We all talk about the rainforest, but truthfully, you are right that it allows for new growth, new species, new everything to emerge. And you could maybe call that a cleansing. I mean, I even think there's some species of trees that actually need fire to release their seeds. The California redwood, my husband says. That's what
wow.
it is.
Very
okay.
good.
But anyway, it's because we don't see underneath the surface of events. So if I go to the world now and I say, wow, it looks like really we're in utter chaos, is what it looks like. Okay. The truth is out of all of this oppression that is occurring, new inventions are coming up every single day. Okay. And that is part of the evolvement, because we were just looking at something last night where a gentleman in Ireland created a way to do something to water, change the voltage of water so that it nourished plants without any type of pesticide or fertilizer needed. And it was just, he transferred something to a radio wave. I forgot how he did it, but it's in the news. And that's going to make the need for GM, anything like that, obsolete.
Wonderful.
Okay, now that's coming out of the oppression of what we've done to the soil. Okay? And then, anyway, all this new technology that is coming up with solutions for water and pollution, some 19-year-old kid just created a device to put in the oceans that would draw all the plastic in the ocean to it.
Wow.
And then it had a way to transform all that plastic and actually save the wildlife and the ocean mammals. So out of this destruction that we're seeing are coming new inventions. And those new inventions are actually more in harmony with the environment and more in harmony with the earth. Okay? So let me take it down to a personal level, because if someone experiences something horrific, or let's say evil in their lives, they have a family member that gets murdered, a child who gets raped, they lose a child really young from illnesses, you could categorize all that as evil doing, right? Okay. But if you get in somebody's records and you look at their time stream and you look at the cause and effect relationship that's happening, you see that it does follow a particular, it makes sense, okay, even though it's diabolical, okay? Now, at the highest level, though, Source would talk to us and say that we are evolving to a place where we don't need to learn in those ways anymore. In other words, there is a way for evolution to occur without going through suffering and destruction. Okay, there is a way. We're not at it yet because our brains are still dualistic. And so as long as our brains are dualistic and we're looking at things in positive and negative terms, and that's how we process, we are not going to manifest unity consciousness effects. Because in unity consciousness, there's only creativity, you see.
Yeah.
It's only boundless creativity. It's not.
Aingeal, we're going to go on break, and we're going to continue this particular discussion when we return from our top of the hour break. We'll be right back.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back, everybody, to part 2 of the Just Bernard Show, live here on Revolution Radio with our wonderful guest, Aingeal Rose. If you've been listening, we have not only been speaking about the Akashic Records, but other, how shall we say, details of living in this human form and how it affects our Akashic Records and how the Akashic Records can help us. With that being said, before the break, we were speaking with Aingeal Rose about the difference between good and evil, and how can we create how do we know the difference? And Aingeal had mentioned something about how we are all headed toward unity consciousness, and how do our actions affect that? Are we headed in the right direction? One thing I will say, and Aingeal, I hope you're back now, but I just wanted to say that I forgot whether it was Joseph Campbell or another metaphysical philosopher that said that sin is going against what our gut knows is right and going against what we know is right for us. And would that be a fair definition of evil for us?
Well, see, there's so many degrees of evil.
On the 3D.
Well, let's just say it's one way. It's one way that we may cause digression for ourselves instead of evolution. Okay, but having said that, you can learn through any experience, even if you go against your gut feeling and you find yourself in a situation that isn't really what you wanted because of your own choice. I mean, you could still evolve out of that by making different choices.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it goes back to saying, and I just want to remind everyone what we were speaking of prior to the break was that just because something is detrimental or hurtful to us, it may be the opening of something greater for ourselves. I'm sure that many of our listeners have gone through traumatic situations, whether it be losing a wonderful job, whether it be losing a partner, that opened a new door to a greater awareness and a greater way of living for us. So even though the clouds are gathering, this may be actually an opportunity versus something that is, quote unquote, evil.
Yeah, and another way I'll explain that is I also had a partner later on in my life, actually the partner before my beautiful, beloved husband now, that committed suicide. And we weren't married, but we were living together, and he did suffer with bipolar, and one day he just decided, this is it, I'm taking myself out. And yet I have to tell you, going through that experience, which was of course very different than losing a partner from murder or losing a partner from illness, it was a whole other type of experience. But I remember sitting in the cabin in New Mexico after the fact and feeling this bittersweet feeling. I had mixed emotions in the sense that the guy was so unhappy here that I was happy for him that he found release from his physical body, because he really had set up his life in a way where he was in a no-win situation with the way he saw himself and a bunch of other things, okay?
Right.
So And I had heard from him after he died, so I knew where he was, and I've actually kind of watched his progress since his suicide. But so, and the one, even though I was going through this pain of losing this person, there was also a part of me that was happy for his release. So it actually brought me to a higher experience of what it means to love someone.
Yeah.
You know, in other words, loving someone doesn't always mean that you want them to stay in their body and be miserable because you don't want to miss them. You know what I'm saying? And I even went back to that cabin 2 or 3 times because I didn't see that coming. I mean, I knew that he'd struggled with being suicidal. He was my friend for 8 years before we were together, so you know, his feelings weren't new. But I had actually thought we were in a place where he wasn't considering that as an option. Okay, so I didn't see that coming, and I deliberately went back to that cabin 6 months later and then a year later because I said to Spirit, I said, I want to know what I missed. What did I miss? You know. And I did. I mean, I went back, and miles down the road, I could feel his sadness. And I actually felt levels of him that I never experienced being his partner. So I guess really what I'm trying to say is I think every experience is bittersweet in the sense that in pain, you know, what I felt was pain and suffering is very close to joy and extreme love. You know, it really depends on what is actually transforming in the process. And I think it is how we see it. But I also want to say here too, though, that from Source's perspective, Source's desire is that we do evolve to become a species where we don't have to learn by these contrasts, where evolution, our personal evolution, is not dependent on adversity and pain. It really becomes an expression of ecstasy in every moment, and Source has given me a bit of a taste of what that actually is. But the best human way I can experience it is that when you keep working on yourself and you start looking into your beliefs, especially if you're going through something or have gone through something that has been painful to you, and you start looking at your own consciousness around it, you do clear away a lot of information that you don't know about yourself. And when you do that, you know, you become harmless. You end up not having any desire whatsoever to ever harm anything. And when you get to that place, you're starting to be in a whole different brain state where you understand the necessity for pain and suffering is not applicable at higher levels of evolution. So I just wanted to put that part in there too.
No, that's absolutely perfect, Aingeal, and thank you for sharing that. My next question to you, Aingeal, is for those of us, and I know there are thousands listening to this radio show that are probably making an effort to evolve in the way that we're speaking of in today's show. And I can't help but, as someone who goes through this personally, I can't help but bring up the fact that we vibrate on different levels of awareness throughout our day and throughout our life, throughout our week, you know, throughout our month, whatever it may be. And I would like to perhaps if we could touch on the idea that, not even the idea, but just to give us the, I don't even know what the word I'm looking for is, but the reality of it is that sometimes we worry. Sometimes we react. Sometimes we have mood swings. Sometimes we're at a high vibration. Sometimes we're at a low vibration, depending on the time of day, depending on the circumstance. But that does not mean that you're not evolving. And I'm wondering if you could help us with that.
Yeah, that's great. Because really, when you do start to evolve, you do come into, well, you go with the flow. You know, there's an acceptance that happens with life and what's happening with it, as opposed to a resistance. But having said that, I'll give you a story that I went through one time, and it might, again, put things in perspective.
Great.
I was flying to visit my mother one time back east, and I myself go through a very distorted terror of flying. Okay, and it's gotten worse in the past few years. And I've examined it and said, well, I don't want to be out of control and blah blah blah. You know what I mean? But the point is it does seem to be a way that I personally get waylaid. And I was on this plane and I was feeling fearful. And next thing you know, my higher guides come in and say, you're like a chameleon. And I said, it gave me this image of a chameleon changing colors, reacting to its environment. 1 minute it's pink and next minute it's green. And it basically said, it was kind of like a little bit of a scolding in a way. It was saying you're a chameleon. You have no center. Your center pillar is just non-existent. Okay, because you're in reactive mode all the time. You're reacting to everything. So in answer to your question, it was kind of saying to me, get a hold of yourself, strengthen your inner core so that you're not in a reactive mode to everything that's going on in your environment all the time. And what I found too is, like, if I was around people who were in particular moods, it would affect my mood.
Yep.
My parents were very depressed people, so you'd go visit them and you'd feel like you were dumped down a black hole while you were visiting and you couldn't wait to get out, And it was kind of saying, well, it's because you don't have a strong inner pillar. You're supposed to be a generator of, in other words, you're supposed to be a creator of your environment. And that doesn't mean, well, it's all about me just getting what I want in my life. That's not what it meant. It meant that if you're stable in your inner presence, you radiate a particular quality of energy that affects your environment, not that your environment always knocks you off center. All right, so on the one hand, there's no judgment in the universe. So if you're at a place where you're still floating throughout the day and your moods are shifting based on what's going on in the world or in your life, there's no judgment around that at all, okay? It's just trying to say, is that how you want to be for the rest of your life? Do you just want to be in reactive mode?
Right.
Because there's another way to be. Like, there's many things that go on in the world and in my life, but I have to say that my inner core is stable in the sense of what my knowledge is of the truth of creation and what's really going on in the big picture. So even though I can get upset, in fact, I wanted to address Syria just for a moment, if I could.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Only because you mentioned it in the beginning, and I have to tell you that I was asking Source when you were mentioning Syria if there was going to be a war, and Source said to me, as long as there is a negative agenda, there's going to be wars because they feed off the blood. And I thought that was an interesting thing it just said. Okay, so look, so now I know that bloodshed is a requirement of the negative agenda.
Yep.
Right? They got to have more blood because we're waking up and because the world is becoming, people are desiring peace. People are let's say they're choosing peace now, right? They're choosing their rights in different places. We're inventing things that are going to correct the mistakes. So there's more light coming in, and people are switching over to more love. So the negative agenda, they're dying. They've got to create something that they can feed off of, so that they're not gone altogether. It's another last-ditch effort, okay, to just literally shed blood. And if you've been into magic, you probably understand the magnetics
Absolutely.
of that.
Yep.
Okay. I kind of got off track. What was I talking about?
No, but let me.
I don't know. Go ahead, Bernard. Where do you want to go from here?
Let me jump in here and say that the reality of it is I myself have gotten messages from my guides that this particular situation has been a last-ditch effort, that they are losing power, that the reality of it is that humanity has gotten to the point that we are ready to create the new paradigm. And because we are ready to create the new paradigm, these mongrels, for lack of a better term, are going to shed more blood in order to feed their power. Now, my question to you, Aingeal, is as far as the Akashic records are concerned, does humanity have a collective Akashic record, and does the planet Earth have a collective Akashic record? And is this a part of that?
Well, okay, not as a group. Okay.
I'm speaking Jungian here. Collective unconsciousness.
Yeah, I know. No, that's okay. There is a collective unconscious, which is a collective agreement, right? That is in place. But I wouldn't call that the Akashic records. See, to me, the Akashic records is the recording of events, and that continues moment to moment. Okay, so I don't really necessarily see the Akashic records as a group soul. I see it as the all that is. Okay, and the all that is changes and fluctuates, and new creations are made, all the time. Now, is there a agreed soul movement for a planet? I'm even going to say somewhat, because not every individual on this planet is in agreement with this movement.
Yeah.
Okay? So this is why oftentimes when I've gone in the records, because people ask me the question every week they check in and say, what's the situation now? What's the world, ultimately I always get the same answer. I get the answer you get. Source tells us that the time of evil is over. Source calls the negative agenda the little minions. But it does say that we're in a process of cleansing. To get from A to B, there's this crap in between, okay? And we're going through it. But, it's helpful to know, I think, what the choices really are that each one of us needs to make to be moving this forward. And, sources also told us that we don't, even though this planet is evolving, it's not a requirement of the universe that we go through cataclysms and, losing land masses and all these storms. It's not a requirement that evolution occur that way. It's only occurring that way because we're still so dualistic inside ourselves. And it gave me another image one time of, imagine if we were all in our center pillars, if we really understood that we're creators, that we don't have to obey anybody, okay, that we create every single second with our thoughts. And by the way, a lot of us are responsible for creating negative entities, because any negative thought we have creates a being someplace. All right, but Source actually gave me an image of, it kind of showed the whole world, and it showed every one of us as a standing column or pillar of light. And it said if we understood that and we were in our presence, we would just be evolving this planet, into a paradise without any landmass needing to be destroyed. We wouldn't have to go through that particular part of it. But to answer your question and coming full circle, the group soul is building momentum in terms of there are more people choosing peace and choosing harmony and love. And so the percentage of people that still want, let's just say that still need to feed off of other people's energies and other people's blood, is diminishing. And so that's really what they're afraid of. They're trying to find another way. So not everybody's in agreement. But there are times set in universal cycles that do cause, let's say, dispensations of energy to be released from the center of the universe so that all planets and species can evolve to another higher level. That's
an absolute truth, and I thank you for sharing that. I have this might be a very uncomfortable question, but you should be prepared for uncomfortable questions here on the Just Bernard show. What would you say? What would you say to these young men and women that are signing up to become a part of the American Empire military? What would you say to them to perhaps maybe give them a greater perspective of what is really happening and what they're signing up for.
Yeah, are you talking about people that are just signing up for the military?
They're signing up because they have these what shall we say, recruitment booths in front of Walmart and at their colleges and whatnot, and they do it in very low income areas. And yet, and from a personal level, I will say that I have had young men and women that are part of the GIC that have signed up because there is nothing else for them to do. What would we say to these young people that are signing up for the military, and what are they doing to their karma? What are they doing to their Akashic record?
Yeah,
what are they doing to the planet?
I know, and that's a really good question. I'm not uncomfortable with it at all.
Wonderful, good, thank you.
It is unfortunate that a lot of these children, let's call them children, okay, are doing it because they are promised some sort of education at the end, and their parents have a lot to do with that also. It is unfortunate, and I never really think anybody needs to do that because there's, my daughter just told me yesterday there's so many government grants for education and they just don't tell these people that they're there, okay? So that's one thing I just want to mention. But I am very, very concerned about people who do join the military. And the reason I am is because, in a way, Bernard, it's not like the old days during peace times,
No.
when you join the military and, I know people who were in the Air Force for most of their lives and never saw war and thought it was a fantastic career and learned okay. But we're not in that time period now. We are in a time period where what they're requiring of these military people to do things that go against humanity, okay? And it's the same thing that they're doing with police forces. I mean, they're asking these children to turn against their own brothers and sisters. So I do worry about that, and I do wonder about the choice on a soul level that these kids are making. I think they may have some perception in their mind that it's going to be some wild, wonderful adventure. And yet, I also know somebody who, I'll give you this as an example because it's a good point. I had a girlfriend whose son, ever since he was young, kept saying, I want to be in the Marine Corps, I want to be in the Marine Corps. And nobody in his family was in the Marines. He just was born talking about being in the military. All right, so you can look at that and you can say, okay, his past life stream, he's got some desire to be in the military. And so he joined when he was 18 and he got sent to whatever war was going on then. And he stepped on a mine, okay? And he didn't die, but he lost fingers and he lost toes, and of course he got sent home. But that's all it took for him to have a very different perception of his fantasy, okay? And I am worried about these things because what I actually think needs to happen is, okay, so I'll say two things, and this is when it gets a little complex. On the one hand, we're still in a process. So we actually do need guardians of the peace, let's say. And it would be great if the military was a guardian of the peace. But it's not becoming a guardian of the peace. It's becoming, a police state. It's becoming military that's going to abuse innocent people. Okay? So it's all distorted right now. But what would be great is if we did have people who just said, I'm not fighting anymore. I'm not interested in warfare, but I'm interested in being a guardian of the peace. That would be fantastic. Okay, so, but until we get out of this chaos that we're in, unfortunately, you do need guardians of the peace. But I would tell anybody that's considering going in the military, any young person, don't do it, because what you're really going to be asked to do is enslave your fellow brothers and sisters. That's just the way I feel about it. I just think they're going in at a time where they're going to be used and abused and put to the slaughter.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree
Yeah.
more, and I thank you for your honesty in this in answering this question, because uh, for those of us who, like yourself, who are I don't want to sound dualistic, but those that have evolved themselves on the spiritual path, we have a greater perception of clarity and understanding of what is the quote unquote story of our planet. And at this point, it is very fair to say that anyone involved in the military is signing up to enslave other people, or to rape the natural resources of that particular country that we're invading. And I just can't help but think about Syria. What is going to I have no idea what Syria has. I don't know what, do they have diamonds? Do they have oil? Do they have gold? I have no idea what's going on there. If anything, maybe it's a strategic place for the United States to create a military base. But with that being said, the reality of it is do we want to align ourselves with the awakening and the creation of a peaceful paradigm for humanity, or are we going to feel so desperate that we must join, for lack of a better term, a gang? It's a global gang
It is.
to manipulate and to steal resources from others in another country, and it's very disconcerting because, again, as I said prior to this particular question that I asked you, I have seen multiple people who have been fans, friends, and members of my work of the Global Illumination Council that are like, well, I'm just going to join the military, and thinking that that's a feasible option. So with that being said, Aingeal, now that we're speaking bluntly and very, very, very clear to humanity, if there is no other option, these people are, these young men and women are being forced, quote unquote, economically, and it is an economic situation why these people join the military for many reasons. What would be an alternative?
Well, I'm going to say something about that. Okay, and this goes back to the whole concept of our evolution, in that we need to become self-generating. Okay, and what does that mean practically? So if you look around the world, and anybody on Facebook, or you can see that all over the planet there are new projects being initiated. There's new ways of agriculture that people are developing. There's new communities being developed. There's all sorts of people who are on the evolutionary end and are not interested anymore in the competitive framework. They're not even buying into the lie that you need this huge college degree to make it in the world. Okay? Basically using their own inner resources and reasoning to come up with solutions to world problems. And, and I say to these young people, why don't you seek that out? Why don't you look around the world and you see where are there projects being started? Where are there communities that are changing the dynamics of how they run their communities? Here you got Oprah over in Hawaii doing all this organic farming. There's people all over the world that are building.
We're going on break, Aingeal. We'll be right back.
Okay, go ahead.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show, and boy, we're having a great discussion with Aingeal Rose O'Grady. Let me just mention ever so quickly, her book that is out right now is called A Time of Change, Akashic Guidance for Spiritual Transformation. And I'm sure you can just hit Google and find where you can purchase it. And by all means, check it out, because it's a book that I can just pick up every day and just open it up to any page, and I will get, what do they call that? A bibliomancy. It's a bibliomantic book. Just open it up every day. You'll get your lesson. You will learn something about yourself and your spirit. Before the break, we were talking about, the unfortunate circumstance that is dealing with the military and the young people that are joining because they have either no choice or, they have been programmed to believe this is the proper thing to do. Now, Aingeal, let me ask you this particular question with that. In reference to their Akashic record and or their karma, will they relive this?
Well, I can't really say. It depends on what they do as a soul. Okay, so while we were on the break, though, Source did remind me that military, we could have a situation like Egypt where the military actually turned to support the people.
Yeah.
And this could happen in this country. So it reminded me that, yes, these guys are joining up, and we need to not look at it only in one way, because they could turn out to be the military that says, we're not doing this anymore, and they may actually turn against the oppressors. So that's a potential that's out there, I just have to say. No,
and that's a very good potential. I actually want to mention that in my gut, I have felt that, especially here in the United States, that eventually, I don't want to say eventually, but I will say intuitively, I have felt that the military is going to decide what is proper for the American people and withhold the freedom of the people over the elite few. So I think that's a great point. So thank you for sharing that. So if you are going to join the military, make sure that you are doing it for the people and not for the corporations. That's a very, very good point. To bring the discussion back a little bit to the Akashic Records and to what people might be concerned or worried about, I've been meaning to ask you this over the last hour. What is death? What do we? I know that's a very, very large question. We're raising the vibration ever so quickly here on this discussion. But the transformation of moving into death and the area or the state of being in between lives, what is death in your understanding?
Okay. All right. Okay.
But I know.
Many levels of this too, Bernard.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so Source's answer would be that death is something that we have created ourselves. And we've created it because we don't know how to get out of here. Okay, in other words, death really is a release from the physical world. And I can tell you a few funny stories about it so that we look at it a little differently. But I just recently had a friend die. She was young. She was in her 50s, and she died fairly quickly of this aggressive cancer. But when I talked to her after she crossed over, she said it was as easy as walking through a doorway. Wow. And I think people need to understand that it really is that easy. You literally do just walk out of the physical universe into spirit. So most souls experience a huge blissful release from being in the physical world and from everything that it has with it. So on the one way, we can look at it as no big deal. Okay? It's no big deal because the truth is that your spirit does go on and on. Okay, and to touch on reincarnation too only came into effect. It only became something that had to happen once the human digressed to the point that it couldn't activate its own DNA strands to ascension potential any longer. Okay, so there has been a digression of the human race in terms of abilities that early inhabitants of the earth had, and I'm talking on multiple levels too, because we were very etheric before we were densely physical. But we always had essential potential built in, but that got altered so that we don't activate the DNA strands automatically anymore, that we would need, where at the end of a physical experience you could just, translate yourself into light and move on. Okay? So death was actually created from falling. I guess let's just use that buzzword, okay?
Okay.
It was created from falling, and then once that happened, reincarnation came into play. And, you hear all these stories of people on a spiritual journey that the goal is to get off the wheel of incarnations. And in a way that's true, okay? It's true because it's not natural. It's not natural to our divinity, you see, to be stuck in a loop where the progress is so slow and we come back in and have to live lives over and over just in the hope that we'll make different choices and evolve and kind of repair our DNA strands up the ladder. Now, I want to branch off here just for a second to remind everyone that the truth of your anatomy is that you do have an ascension pharmacy inside your body. Okay, and I remember I came in here when I was born, I came in here remembering that, we didn't die, that we didn't get sick, that we did translate our bodies into light when we wanted to move between different reality systems. You would just downstep your frequency to a planet or an experience to find out about it, and then you'd leave when you wanted. And obviously, that is still possible for us to achieve, believe it or not. It's just that we have to put a lot of attention on working with our Kundalini energy, and I'm not talking about activating it really, really fast because that's very dangerous. Yeah. But the truth is that every single chakra is an opening to a different reality. We don't actually know about our chakras. We don't actually understand the the music that's in there. We don't understand the realities that it leads us to, the portals that it connects us to. We haven't studied our internal workings. And also, if you start to read even some of the old Egyptian alchemy, they all talk about the fact that when you start activating your inner network, you have an elixir, let's say, that gets secreted from the pineal gland. And right now, for most of us, it's going to be in a pretty unpurified state. When you start to go inward and start working your inner system, that elixir changes. It changes its chemical composition, and that is actually what helps you move in between dimensions and walk through, to teleport yourself and bilocate. These are all real abilities. They aren't fantasy. And the problem is that we have been turned inside out. We've been trained to only focus on the outer world as being real. And all of our attention goes there. It goes really, it's all focused on survival. And so we don't ever even get out of the root chakra. We're not out of the first three chakras. And even in those, we don't truly, truly understand the secrets that are in them. In fact, it's one of the group Akashic sessions I'm going to do in September. We're going to start another one where it's only topic specific. The whole 90 minutes will be only on one topic, and we're going to explore those chakras and ask source questions, okay? But I'm bringing this up because you ask about death, in the fact that, if you really understood your workings and the fact that you are limitless in your consciousness potential, because even when I meditated years ago and I was taken on journeys, there was a point where I became very mystical in the sense that I merged with my higher self, and the effect of that merger was automatically healing people around me. They'd come in my house. If they were sick, they'd leave well. I never did a thing, you see. It was just what I was vibrating at that was doing it. And this is what I think part of this whole shift that we're in is we really have to understand that we are causation factors. What we emanate from us determines what gets manifested in this world. And I think the problem is if the negative guys can keep us in fear of survival and convince us, that we're going to die and we're all afraid of death, and they're going to change our food. They're going to, what they're attempting to do is artificialize our biology so that this divinity that I'm talking to you about, which is getting activated in people slowly by the amount of light that's coming in. They don't want that, you see. That's why they're creating, the foods and the pulsing, because they want to turn your body into something that is naturally organic, into something that's artificial, so that you don't have access to your own divinity waking up. So, to me, this is why we have to, the guidance that my husband and I have gotten over the past year is, okay, you need to meditate more. Our whole morning is spent doing inner work. We don't even start really work until 11 or 12, because we understand now that there's inner preparation we have to be doing. So, death is created because of our inability to get ourselves out of the earth through our natural ascension biology. So, in a way, we create it because we believe in it too. In fact, while we were on the break, I wrote down a phrase that maybe we probably wouldn't have time to go into depth about it today, but you could spend a lot of time just talking about the unconscious death urge that's in people.
Yeah.
All right. And we've been told about this with Source. And, if you talk to some yogis believe it takes hundreds of incarnations to undo the unconscious death urge. And that's a part of us that's been inbuilt, where we've been convinced, that we're not worthy of love, that we're guilty people, that there's a judgmental God out there, that we deserve to die. And, we can say on the surface, oh, I don't believe that. But if you truly opened a notebook and started looking at, anytime you're sick, or we talked about choices, when you make a choice that is against your well-being, that's your unconscious death urge.
Yeah.
That's saying you're still aligned with dying in that type of death, where your body decays and you get sick, and, you create some fantastic accident and take yourself out or whatever.
I agree with everything that you're saying, because, well, the reality of it is that what we focus on, we are creating. Now, but speaking about focus and speaking about our pineal gland, and we have about 10 more minutes left. Can you share, and by the way, this has gone by so quickly, and I thank you for this fantastic broadcast. The reality of it is that I have noticed within myself and with those that I am teaching and or sharing information with, that if we begin to focus on our pineal gland, if we begin to bring our consciousness and our awareness to the pineal gland, that the chemical and or the external calcification attributes that have been created by, let's say, fluoridated water and or our diet, that begins to break away. And I'm wondering if you could share with us either the importance of the pineal gland, and to focus on it, to bring some type of alignment with that, because I do understand that is our gateway to the transdimensional reality that we are a part of.
Yes. Okay, well, sources told us that we actually have a pyramid in our brain. And it says it actually involves the ears. And so, like I say, I haven't even touched, I'll say, to the exploration of the purpose of sound in this whole process we're speaking of. Yeah. But anyway, Source talked to us about the ears and said that there's a pyramid. If you draw a line from one ear to the other, and then you imagine a pyramid inside your brain with it peaking, right at the top of the pineal gland, okay? It told us to imagine a mini self of our own sitting in that pyramid in your head. So you actually make yourself small in your mind, and you sit in that pyramid in your brain, and it said you don't even have to do anything. You don't have to say anything. There's no intention. You just put yourself in that pyramid, okay? And even by making a time to focus there and doing that, you will start to activate those potentials that are inside of you. Okay? Now, the other thing we do have to say is that once you start activating the pineal gland, and that can be done through meditation too, by the way. People can just sit there and focus on it or invite it to come alive.
Yeah.
Really. It's the fact that we don't pay any attention to it, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
is part of the reason why it doesn't work. Okay. But you can just imagine that you're closing your eyes and you're sitting inside there and you're communing with your own, or you're watching it. Because Tom Kenyon also created the CD called the Magdalene Meditations. And it goes on old Egyptian alchemy, and it's really just 5 meditations where you slowly activate the Kundalini, but you bring it up into the brain and you nourish different parts of the brain with the energy. Okay? And those have been really powerful for us. So if anybody wants to check those out, they might like to do that too.
Very nice.
Okay, but I think it's easy to start to activate it. But what I was going to say was, we have to understand that once we start activating it, it's going to release different chemicals. And those different chemicals are going to want to change the rest of the biology. So you do have to be aware if you start getting, if you start to detoxify a little bit, that wouldn't surprise me, okay? But also it's going to make you desire, if you're activating it correctly, you will naturally desire different foods.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the things that were keeping you, the foods that were keeping you asleep, let's say, and unconscious, hopefully will no longer attract you. So you'll naturally shift. And then eventually you do shift to, you know, wanting to look at the sunlight and, you know, do a little sun gazing and things like that. So what I'm suggesting is that when people start that, they go with those inner promptings. And just watch what happens to the rest of the body as well, because you should naturally want to change different things about the rest of you.
Right. Is it fair to say, Aingeal, that once we begin to, let's say, for lack of a better term, to activate our pineal gland through our intentions, that we begin to have an ability to, well, let's just say that the intuition speaks a little bit louder, and perhaps we need to start listening to our intuition as far as our health, our diet, our activities and whatnot. But with that being said, and I talk about this very often, and I ask you, what is maybe 1 or 2 things that our listeners could do to perhaps learn to trust their intuition? Because so many of us just ignore it. It's like, oh, you know, don't get on that plane. It's going to crash. Oh, no, I'm still going on it, you know? Or, you know, don't take that job. It's not going to be good for you. And they still do it anyway. Our intuition speaks to us constantly. What are a couple things that people can do to begin trusting their intuition?
Well, you know, I think part of this, Bernard, is the ability to be honest with ourselves. Because the truth is when we do get an intuitive hit, most of us know that it's right, okay? But a lot of the reason people don't choose it is, 1, it may require courage, especially if it's asking you to do something where there's a fear involved. Number 2, it may require a degree of self-honesty, or that we need to change something else in our life. What if it's asking us to change our relationships, for example, okay? What if it's asking us, you know, if our deep inner gut is saying, you know, look, you need to move out of Virginia, Bernard, you need to go to Oregon State, for example. Right. Okay? And, you know, a lot of us will say, oh, geez, you know, I can't do that. You know, I don't have the money to move. It's going to be hard. And the point is, those are exactly the soul challenges that we get presented in lifetimes, where those choices either determine whether you grow and evolve or whether you stay stagnant. So a lot of times intuitions, I think the reason a lot of people don't do what their intuition tells them is that they're afraid of the changes that it require. So I just think, have some courage, take some risk. You know, what's the worst that can happen? You could follow it and and find out that you have to make another decision. You
Yeah.
know, I just think that a lot of it is courage. And, you know, coming full circle here, talking about transformational writing and journaling, self-honesty is so important, as you probably know. And we don't know ourselves because we really do not inquire into the fears that run us. And I think, you know, intuition is something because it should feel peaceful, though. Here's some clues, in my opinion, right? True intuition or true inner guidance should always make you feel peaceful. Okay? It shouldn't bring up fear in you. It should never be a command. It should be a feeling that something is deeply right and deeply the appropriate thing to do. And it should always accompany a sense of calmness. Okay, so
Aingeal, I don't mean to cut you off. I'm so sorry, but we're already at the end of our show.
Okay, that's all right.
And I just wanted to give everybody the opportunity to hear that Aingeal's book, A Time of Change, is available, Akashic Guidance for Spiritual Transformation. Please Google it. You will find it. Next week, we are going to be speaking to a blogger for Oprah Winfrey's network, Mark Nepo. He is the author of the Book of Awakening. It's going to be very awesome. We love you. We'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again. We love you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bernard.
Thank you.